Hello, I am Tuppence. Welcome to Farming with Farmers in Medieval Dynasty. If you are actually looking for information on setting up fields and orchards for yourself and working them yourself, I've linked a video below, this one by Goldie, that covers that. I'm going to be talking about farming with actual farmers, and to do this you will need a barn, which you can see is the building in front of me. To build a barn, you need to open the building menu, which on PC is done with Q, and hopefully commands for console will be up on screen. So pressing Q, this is the buildings menu. So go into buildings, select farming, and here you can see the options for the barns. It's a barn 3 in front of me, fields and orchards. That's how you build the barn. We're going to exit out of that. Fields and orchards work on the cardinal directions north, south, east and west. So I personally prefer to build my barn on the cardinal directions. As you can see when I'm lined up, it is north, south here, so that the fields can be placed neatly around it. Now there are two types of workers that can be assigned to the barn. The first is the barn worker. Oh, sorry. We are going to move into the barn. Barn workers work in here doing threshing, making flour and some crafting on the 3 workbenches that are available. There's also a storage chest which is intended for overflow. Barn workers do not need any tools provided by you. They do, however, need resources. The resources they need, they will take from the resource storage, and anything they craft, they will then return to the resource storage. So you can get 2 types of warnings if you are using barn workers in the barn, and they will be related to either resources or the worker. So to assign a barn worker, first you need to open the management window, which on PC is N, and maybe hopefully the commands will come up for console on screen. You can assign a barn worker one of 2 ways. You can either go into your people management, pick your person you want to assign, select them, assign a workplace. Barn will come up. Select that and you can assign a worker and do it that way. The other way is via the buildings menu. Select the barn, open that, assign a worker, select your worker, select barn worker. They are now assigned, as you can see here, as a barn worker. Thing to note about barn workers is their skill is important to what they can produce. For farmers, that is not the case. Farmers' skill does not matter for working on the fields at all. It does matter for barn workers. To set up the production, go to the second tab here, and here you can see the range of things they can make. To set up a production, go to the plus arrow and press and hold, and set it to the value you want it. You can do that for any number of them, as long as it's within. Let's take that to that. And just to show you, I'm going to add something I know that they can't make, and there you can see immediately the difference. Here it says they are working, we're within working hours. Here it says no resources, and it has no resources because I have no clay available. You can set their work intensity to 100% with no issues whatsoever. You might need to set it lower if they are overproducing, if you haven't got enough for them to work at 100%, various factors, but 100% is absolutely fine. So I'm now going to show you quickly that will give me, hopefully, there you go, up on the left hand side, I've got a production warning, number of 1. And that relates there you can see no resources. So I'm going to take that off, and that warning will now disappear. As you can see there, it's disappeared. Now, I don't actually want anybody working in the barn because I'm going to be showing you more about the farming aspects of it. So I am actually going to go back to this one. I'm going to remove him as a barn worker. I can't just reassign him as a farmer, so I'm going to remove him. And now you can see the barn has a no worker warning. And if I tab out, the 1 has disappeared, the 2 has come up because of the barn having work set up for 2 items that there's no worker to perform it. So I'm now going to cancel that out. And that warning will disappear. All I have now is the no assignment set. That doesn't matter because I've got nobody working in the barn as a barn worker. And now those warnings will disappear. Now, warnings for farmers do not come up on the game screen. What you will get, I'm going to put a picture I took from another game up on screen now. And it shows you that you can have a warning if they have no tools. Now, just to show you what tools they would be, you can see here these are the tools that farmers need. They need a hoe, they need a bag, and they need a sickle or a scythe for harvesting some of the crops. So if any of these tools are missing, you will get the warning that I just showed you up on screen. The only other thing to note about the barn is that it has a workable, efficient working radius, which is about 70 meters. And I've actually placed, you can see my blue map marker here, pretty much central in the barn, which means I can then measure out how far I can go with my fields and know that, or orchards, and know that they are within working range. I'm going to bring up my management screen here because if I look at the fields I've set up, you can see I've got a little field, 3 and 2 orchards that are actually outside the workable range of the barn, or the effective workable range. It doesn't mean they won't get worked, they will just be less effectively worked. And those orchards are actually located just outside of the workable range. They are actually just down here. This one here is actually just inside the range at 69 meters. This one is at 72 meters. This one at 76 meters, and they are just outside of the workable distance. I will go into a bit more detail of why that is important a bit further on in the video. So now we're going to move on to the next section, which is to talk about fields. So let's go. So here we are on the first day of spring, and the farmers are starting to arrive to the barn to work. One thing is true of farmers that is not true of other workers in your village. Farmers' work only begins once they reach the field. They travel from wherever they are in the village to the barn, and then out to whichever is the nearest field to them that has work available. So you can just see here, these 2 farmers are coming out to start grubbing up the 2 fields I have placed. It's therefore recommended that you try and keep fields close to the barn, and your workers that are going to be working in the barn as farmers living close by, so that they're not having to travel too far before they can start work. Fields, however, are not tied to a barn. So if you have a field that's some distance away, and we only have 2 workers out here at the moment, if there was a field that needed work halfway across the map, I have 6 other farmers waiting inside. One of them at least would be heading off towards work somewhere far away, and the walking time that they spend getting there is not productive. This is why we say it is not a good idea to have fields in 2 separate areas, even if you have a barn in both areas, because they will be allocated the next available work on a field irrespective of the barn they work in. Right, so the order of work on fields is exactly the same as if you do it yourself. First the grubbing up, then the fertilising, then the ploughing, and then if it's the right season, the seeding. You have one worker per job on the field at a time. So if you have only one crop on a field, the maximum number of workers you will have on a field is 4 workers at any one time. In this case, it's grubbing up, fertilising, ploughing and seeding. When it comes to harvesting, it'll be 1 harvesting, 1 fertilising, 1 ploughing, and if it can be seeded again the same season, seeding. If it can't, then it'll just be the 3. So you can see now we have 3 workers on this side, 1 ploughing, and this side again, 3, and very soon you'll see the last 2 farmers come out to start planting on both of these fields. Farmers get all their tools and the seeds for planting and the fertiliser from the resource storage. When it comes to harvesting, fruit and veg harvest goes to the food storage. All the other crops and the seeds they collect during harvesting go back to the resource storage, and they are then accessible by other workers as they need to use them. You can have field sizes from as big as 16 by 16, which is what this one is on this side, and you can go as small as 1 by 1. What I have on this side is 5 by 5, and I'm going to be setting up a series of smaller fields as they progress, so that I have matching fields in small fields to match what's being planted in the one big field. And just to show you briefly what I've got set up, I'm going to open my management, navigate to my fields. This is where you set your fields up, and on this field, if I open it up, here you can see the progress they're making already. And this is what's actually set up. So this is just to show you that you can have more than 1 crop on a field if you want to. You just put in what you want. Now farmers do, as you can see from them working, they work north to south. So they start in the northwest corner, they go down, they go up, they go down, they go up. So if you're going to put multiple crops on one field, go down rather than across, because that will be counter to how they actually work. And here you can see my other oat field, which they're already starting on. I'll be adding, because I want to make sure that I've got 4 workers on the big field at all times, I'll be adding the smaller fields 1 by 1. What else was I going to say? The only time you'll get 5 workers on a field is when you have a field like this, because there are vegetables that are hand-picked and there are grains that are harvested with a scythe or a sickle. So you can at that point have 2 people harvesting, because one will be using a sickle and one will be hand-picking. You will still only have 1 person fertilising, and you'll still only have 1 person ploughing, and you'll still only have 1 person doing any seeding that can be redone. That about covers that. The only thing to say about fields is that if you want to change a crop, then you need to be careful when you do it. Now, as they are getting close to the end of grubbing up this field, and I have 4 workers on that field, I'm just going to show you how to do a field quickly. Open up the building menu, go to buildings, farming, field, place your start point, drag out, and I want this one 5 by 5, and place. And then to set it up, open your management menu, and here you see my new field. You can give it a name by clicking down here, custom name, and this is going to be a 5 by 5, and it's going to be oat 2. Accept that, and then to actually set it up, select it, go into the second screen here, click here, and this is going to be my second one of oats. I select the oats, and I don't want it fully planted because I'm trying to match the quantities, so I'm only going to do 23 in this one, and then that's all I want. So I hit escape, I accept the changes, and now you can see I have 48 oat on the big field and I have 48 oat over 2 smaller fields. So I'm going to pause recording here. I'm going to let them get on and I will come back to you later. Oh yeah, the other thing to mention, if you want to change a crop, you should only do that really at the start of the season that you need the new crop planted in. Say for example rye and oats. Rye is planted in the autumn and harvested in the spring, and oats are planted in the spring and harvested in the autumn. So it is possible to run a field that can have alternate crops. You do need to remember to reset it. So for example, at the very end of winter, after they finish their work, or at the start of spring, you can go in, change your field to oats. The farmers will harvest the rye and they will plant the oats. If you change it say middle of winter, the farmers will go out and destroy the rye and get it ready for planting oats. So if you do want to swap crops, you need to make sure that you do it at the start of the season in which the existing crop is going to be harvested, if you still want it harvested. So I'm going to carry on adding fields. I'm going to let them get on with the planting, and I will come back because I actually want to demonstrate the differences between the field sizes and how effective ones, smaller ones or larger ones are. So we'll come back to you in a bit. So we're back at day 3 of spring and we're just coming to the end of the planting. You can see on the far side there, that's going to be the last seed planted in the big field, and this is going to be the last seed planted in the small fields. As you can see, the small fields go all the way down to there. There we go, they're both finished. Now small fields do take up slightly more space because you have to have little spaces between them. That's the downside of them. I'm now going to move forward to the harvesting in summer. So we'll see you there. Welcome back to summer, day 1. And as you can see, as I described here, we actually have 2 people harvesting. One is harvesting the cabbage and one is harvesting the flax. And that is possible because one is using a scythe and one is hand picking. And you can see there the farmers come behind them to start fertilising. After harvesting, farmers will always set to work to prepare the field ready for the next planting, even if it's not going to be planted again that season. Although I can note that she has started on the cabbage, which are going to be planted again this season, rather than the flax, which was slightly closer to her. I'm not sure if that's intended or not, or just coincidence. And over on the other side, there's harvesting of onions going on, and there's harvesting of cabbage going on, and somebody working on the flax down there. So I will let them get on with the harvesting and report back later in the season. See you then. Okay, so we're underway, and as you can see, the flax has been harvested and the field's redone. The cabbage has been harvested and replanted. The onion field has been harvested and reset, and they are still working on the big field here. So they are in the process of finishing up with this row of flax, which still needs to be tilled, and this was where the onions are, and the cabbage are in the process of being planted. So the big field has been slower to process at the moment than the small fields were for the harvesting perspective. So I'm going to let them finish up. I'm going to fast forward then to run through to autumn, and I will come back and see how they proceed with autumn. See you there. So here we are at the start of autumn, and as you can see, harvesting is well underway with the wheat and the oat on this side, and the harvesting of the wheat has just got underway on this side. As these are smaller fields, there's more people out harvesting. So if getting your harvest in is the priority, then smaller fields to me are the best option, because you will have more of them start the day by harvesting, and therefore more gets harvested before they start preparing the fields. At some point somebody will start coming and preparing the field behind this side. I will come back later in the season when they're close to finishing and see how they're getting on. See you there. Right, well, here we are. The harvesting and sorting of fields is now complete on the small fields, and as you can see, I still have wheat being planted over here. They are still ploughing up where the oats were, and they are still fertilising for where the poppy were. They've still got to fertilise and plough where the cabbage were, and I believe there's still some rye to be planted over here as well. So again, because more farmers can work at a time on different fields when they're smaller fields, they tend to proceed a bit quicker, and there's possibly more of a chance of work being available for them. As you can see now, I only have 3 farmers working, and everybody else is hanging out in the barn with nothing to do. And that's because I can only have these 3 farmers on the field at this point in time. If all of these were in separate fields, there would be more farmers out. So that's it for the comparison of small and big fields. What I'm going to finish up with is a bit of data that I recorded over 10 years of crop yields. So I'll be back with that in a moment. Okay, this is the data I wanted to show you. I planted 100 plots of each of the field crops and 10 orchard plots of each of the orchard crops. I ran the site for 10 years, and this is the data I got harvest-wise over the 10 years, which gives the totals, the average per year. This is the important bit. If you're trying to figure out how much of everything to plant to get what you want at the end of the harvest, then this is the average plot over the 1,000 plots over the 10 years. I will say that this flax is a little bit lower than the average I got on previous calculations I did. So I actually work on 6 for all of these crops. The vegetable crops are slightly variable, so you can see there. This is the lowest per plot, this is the highest per plot, so you can work whichever figures you want to. This is the hops. Just a quick note here, the fruit trees are not mature for 2 years. You don't get the full harvest of them, so I ran that for an extra 2 years, so I got 10 years at full harvest. You can see here that there's quite a bit of variance in the yields. The apples yield much lower than, say, the plum trees do. So this is per tree. This is per plot you plant. And then down here, this is figures based on having 3-day seasons for 4 seasons, that's 12 days a year. And based on if you average 600 harvest in a year, then you have 50 a day available to use for threshing or crafting once you've threshed it. This is what you'd have available vegetable wise per day over the year. So you can take a look at that if that is helpful at all. And just a couple of notes here that you make sure you have extra planting, because the grain you use for crafting is also used to replant. So you need to make sure you're covering that as well. I'll leave that with you. Feel free to pause the screen if you want to look at it in more detail. That's all I have for you. So thank you and goodbye.